Program complete. Enter when ready.
The Discovery one is more gold.
Yeah.
Like most of it's gold. I think the inside is blue, like the same,
Gotcha.
and the lettering is white.
Wow.
But it's pretty
That's
sweet,
wild.
right? So
That's wild, yeah.
I didn't have the magnets that were the right size that are supposed to go. Like you can see the holes in the back where magnets are supposed to go.
Yeah,
But I put my own magnet.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
So it doesn't. So it's supposed to sit flush, but
yeah.
this part goes inside your shirt anyway, so it's like you're not really gonna see.
Right, you're right. I mean, yeah, who's coming over to be like, what's this?
Yeah. It looks kind of cool though.
It does look really cool.
I like it.
I love the Puget sound.
I like to tell joy.
I wear it because I'm happy.
Oh. I wear it. I enjoyed it.
Risk. Risk is our business. Out there. That way.
What happened?
Starfleet was founded to seek out new life. Well, there it sits.
Sounds like fun.
Rock and roll. 6.
We're not afraid of diversity. We don't persecute it, we embrace it.
At least I won't die alone.
Join our Federation of Planets and reach for the stars.
Those were the days.
All right. We're back with another Trek review where we talk about Star Trek Weekly. This week, we are talking about the Strange New Worlds episode 6, entitled Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach. It first aired June 9th, 2022. It was written by Robin Wasserman and Bill Wolkoff, and it was directed by Andy Armganian. So before I move ahead to the synopsis, I'll introduce myself. My name is Will, and this is my co-host,
Caleb.
the second servant.
Yeah, and the first. The first one. It's funny that they're always the first.
Yeah. It's never
Even
like the
when
10th
they're the
servant.
last.
So here is the synopsis for episode 6. The synopsis is: a threat to the idyllic planet reunites Captain Pike with the lost love of his life. To protect her and a scientific holy child from conspiracy, Pike offers his help and is forced to face unresolved feelings of his past.
Yeah. So he
That's-
faces them all right.
That's the synopsis. But here we go. Now we get to ask Caleb, what does he think of the episode?
I always sound like a broken record because every time we get on here, I'm like, it was a good episode. But it was a good episode, and I really enjoyed it. I like that we kind of get to focus more on Pike now.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like the last one was about Spock, and I like that characters get their own episode here and there. But I mean, Pike is the show. The captain is always the most important person on the ship. So getting to see him and like deal with stuff and kind of be like the sole person on that like planet was pretty great. And a couple things happened that surprised me, honestly. Like I didn't see coming.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I mean, it felt like a classic Star Trek episode.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the few that like when it like how it is.
Yeah.
It's very like self-contained.
Yeah.
It's like, sure, he makes reference to kind of knowing his future and some other things here and there, but for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
it's a pretty much like if you never saw any start episode of Strange New Worlds, like you could just watch this and just be like, oh wow, okay.
Yeah, and that's a funny concept that we talk about all the time too. Is like you always tell me that, like, original Star Trek was not episodic
Right.
because of the time frame.
Yeah.
And I didn't grow up watching it like that, so I don't have any point of reference. But a lot of my favorite episodes of Enterprise are not like don't follow like the main theme,
Yeah.
like arc of Enterprise.
Yeah.
They're like standalone episodes that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
So I guess I get that. I get what makes like standalone episodes so good and feel like Star Trek.
I think it's just that, like, at the end of the day, we as fans, we like getting a little slice of the galaxy weekly, and then you're like, oh, okay, cool. And like, you don't got to get bogged down with like, oh yeah, that's right, 2 weeks ago he said this thing.
Yeah, right.
Like, nah, it's all right. You just watch it. You just watch whatever's happening in that episode. That's what's happening, and that's it. Like that's it. It's easy to follow and stuff. And
Yeah. The
eventually the shows, they change, they incorporate a lot more stuff, and it's fine. But
yeah,
by and large, that's what people like the most.
the funny thing about episodic TV shows too is that the previously on always spoils like what is going to happen in the episode.
Yes,
because there'll be a thing that happened like forever ago, and then they'll do like previously on Star Trek, and it's like it'll be like some main like theme point, and you're like, okay, well, obviously that's going to get brought up because they wanted you to remember that happened weeks ago.
They're like, yeah, you're like, oh, why are they specifically showing this scene? It's like, I always hide my knife in the pillow. You're like, why are they showing
you
that
know
again?
that I keep this phaser on heavy phase always. It's like, oh, okay, cool, he's gonna have to use the phaser.
He's gonna be shooting somebody today.
Yeah. But the Enterprise didn't start doing that until like the Xindi.
Yeah, well, that's really when they became,
because that was when they got like bogged down in weekly.
Yeah. Deep Space Nine, it gets a lot into it. It gets like real. What's the term you said? I really like it. Lost in the weeds. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think sometimes it does do that. Yeah,
it's like it's a really good show, but it's like as the show goes on, you're just like, okay. Like, oh, we're still doing this storyline.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, but we're gonna do something else silly or funny or interesting in the episode. But 80% of it is this thing that you've been talking about for the last 6 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, that gets kind of old.
Yeah. But that's all right. It's okay. That's what makes Star Trek, and that's what makes it fun to talk about.
It's true.
I think it's one of the hallmarks of Star Trek is why it stands the test of time is because people like it so much and they pick it apart and try to like just, I don't want to say destroy it, but they just try to really, really just get the minutia out of everything. And it's because they like it. They're like, well, why would he say that? Because of this thing. And it's just like, but at the same time, the same people who are upset about it and complain about the show and don't like the show, like they're watching the episodes. They're like, oh, I think Discovery's really stupid and they shouldn't be able to do this. And
but you're watching it
next week. They're like,
that was actually a pretty good episode of Discovery.
Yeah.
It's Star Wars fans are the same way.
Yeah.
There'll be a show and that they love, and then they'll do like one episode that's kind of like different, and they're like, "This is so stupid. This is so terrible. I don't like this anymore." It's like, okay,
but I'll watch next week.
Yeah, stick around. I guess I don't know what to tell you.
Now we can crack on in it and get into the overall review. It says, Captain's log, stardate 1943.7. We have arrived at the Magellan system, a minor star cluster at the edge of Federation space. I was last here 10 years ago on a rescue mission. When a pulsar nearly kills you, you tend not to forget. Our mission today is a routine cartographic survey. I suspect it will be a lot quieter. As the USS Enterprise arrives in the Magellan system, Captain Pike is joined in the turbolift by Cadet Uhura, who appears to have trouble with her shoulder. She explains that she tended to get a little sore after combat training, and Pike remembers she has been on rotation with La'an that week. He mentions lesson 1 of security, that a Regalian taiga pounces without warning, something Uhura ruefully admits she learned that week. Pike knows La'an has a great deal to teach, but he warns her to watch out for lesson 7. Uhura worriedly asks about lesson 7, and he makes a lips are sealed gesture as the turbolift arrives at the bridge. Uhura is immediately confronted by La'an, who curtly asks if she found her break restful, before revealing lesson 2 of security, with help from Lieutenant Ortegas at the helm. If there are no breaks in security because threats never take breaks. Pike looks amused knowing Uhura is in for it now, just as Una reports a distress call from a non-Federation shuttle, saying that they were under attack. Spock's scans show the attacking vessel to be a small combat cruiser with light armaments, also with a non-Federation identification. Pike orders Ortegas to raise shields and bring them closer.
I like the whole like intro. Well, I guess that's not the entire intro, right? Because they didn't do the space, the final frontier.
That's true. Yeah, they didn't do that yet. No.
Yeah. So I like that interaction with like Pike and Uhura, like in the thing, and I like that he like mocks or kind of mimics Lon. I enjoyed that pretty good. And it's cool. I honestly I like seeing, because like Uhura is like a cadet. I like the fact that she basically like mentors like this section or this like position on the ship, like revolving. So like a couple episodes ago, she was with Hemmer in engineering, and now this week she's in security.
Yeah,
it's cool. I like that. I like getting to see her like revolve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a cool little beat. You can just have this character, like you can put this character in different positions and like have the character that she's interacting with like have like peel away their more about who they are and like why they're the way that they are, and you get to see more aspects of that like department.
Yeah. And do they do that like specifically to kind of like see where they are best like fit on the ship, like if like in the future?
I would assume it goes much to two things, is that like she's doing this for as like work experience, and also back in episode 1 or 2, whenever she was having the dinner with Pike, I think it's like a thing where she's like, well, I don't really know if I want to be in Starfleet, and I don't really know what I want to do. So I think that it's like a thing where she's just hopping from department to department to like get a feel for what she wants.
Yeah, I can see that. It's cool. Nonetheless, I like seeing that.
Yeah. It was a good little like bit right before they get into like basically the meat of what's going to be happening in the episode.
Yeah. I like that it gets like action forward like pretty quickly too.
Pretty quickly, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then that's what we'll get into. We'll get into it quickly. In orbit of a nearby moon, the attacker disables the shuttle's engines and engage grapplers to reel the shuttle in. Just as the Enterprise arrives on scene, Pike orders Ensign Sankar at communications to hail the cruiser. When they do not reply, he orders an open channel. He identifies himself and his ship and warns that he is obliged by Federation law and his own conscience to intervene on behalf of a ship in distress, ordering the cruiser to stand down. The cruiser's response is to fire on the Enterprise, but with minimal damage. Lieutenant Mitchell reporting that shields were only down 0.02%. Pike orders red alert and evasive maneuvers. Uhura is at the tactical station under Lan's supervision. As Pike asks if they should disable the ship's weapons without blowing her to smithereens. Lan instructs Uhura to charge the phasers at their lowest capacity, but the attacker changes course and fires again just as Uhura fires the phasers, resulting in severe damage to the attacker and causing it to spin out of control and crash onto the moon's surface. Sankar receives an urgent hail from the shuttle requesting immediate evacuation. Spock reports the shuttle's life support is failing. Pike orders them beamed aboard and leaves with Una to greet their guests. It happens a couple other times in Star Trek where it's like they encounter some sort of aggressive attacker.
Yeah.
And then it's like, they're not doing anything, Captain. Like it's minimal, it's negligible amount of damage to the shields.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, give them a warning shot, and then it's like, and then they're like, oh, and the ship usually almost always turns around and tries to get away. So it was kind of funny to see, like, that's what she was trying to do too, was like do a warning shot or just kind of graze them, and it was just like, oh, you just like split the ship in half, and it's
I was very surprised to see that. They do a good job of like making it like specifically look like they were turning, and that's kind of what caused that to like happen.
Yeah. The only complaint I have about it is she does it. It's clear that was not the intention. Pike does make a comment that he's like, well, you shot at us 3 times, like, what do you expect to get?
Yeah, you've engaged like conflict at that point.
Well, yeah, but I just was thinking he was just like, everybody was just like, all right, whatever. Well,
finish him off.
It's like, well, they are people, and that's kind of like the whole thing about the Federation is maybe care about those who are crashing on the planet right now.
Plus, so here's the other thing too, is because like when I saw this scene, it took me a little bit to kind of figure out what exactly was like going on.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I thought the small ship was the one that was being hostile.
I see.
And the bigger ship was trying to subdue it when the Enterprise showed up.
I see.
Enterprise shows up and they don't really know like what the thing is going on.
Right.
And because like comms, they weren't talking through comms. It could have been this thing where like the bigger ship was like they were attacked, or they had like hostages in the shuttle and they were trying to like reclaim them, and then Enterprise comes in and like blows that ship up. Which you kind of see towards the end of the episode that like those kind of were the good guys of the episode.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And they just kind of swoop in and like totally disrupt everything.
Yeah,
knowing.
To your point, it is kind of like you don't get enough information type of thing, so you just kind of forge ahead by what looks like is going on.
Yeah, and it's one of those things you can be critical of, but I also think it's realistic, and I kind of like that. They don't know what they're getting into when they show up. It could be.
Isn't it kind of also like the other thing that they do like in movies and TV shows where it's like that scene where it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, and they're like holding another person and they're going through like a corridor, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this man's trying to hurt me, right? And then everybody in the crowd goes over to the person, and it's like, and he's like, no, that's the criminal. Don't stop me. That's the criminal. And they're like, hey, sir, you need to calm down. It's like a thing where when you don't know what's going on and you show up to the thing, it's like there's a scene in The Fugitive is a perfect example.
Yeah.
He's running. He comes out. He's coming out of I think it's the jail. It's some sort of like he's running in the building, and Tommy Lee Jones is chasing him, and he's really close to catching up to him. And he rounds the corner, and as Harrison Ford is rounding the corner, he talks to the security desk. And he's like, hey, guys, there's like some kind of crazed guy waving a gun It's like I think there's something bad happening.
Oh
He
yeah.
keeps walking past the security desk to exit, and Tommy Lee Jones comes around the corner with the gun because he's trying to
Yeah.
arrest him. And he's like, "Hey!" And then the security guards get up from the desk and immediately like stop him. And he's like, "No, I'm a federal marshal." He's like, "I'm a marshal. It's him." And then, it's just like it's just
Yeah.
like it's kind of what happens in the scene is. It's like you said, the ship attacking is sort of the good guys, sort of.
Yeah.
And the people that they end up rescuing were kind of the bad guys.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so
think
Pike and Una arrive at the transporter room on deck 6, just as Chief Kyle beams the shuttle passengers aboard. To Pike's surprise, the one to greet him, Alora, is familiar to him, though she greets him as Lieutenant Pike. "You know her, Captain?" Una asks, before jokingly adding, "Or should I call you Lieutenant?"
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So she knew him when he was a lieutenant.
So let me scroll down here. You'll like this. It's on the
Mhm.
Blu-ray. It's a deleted scene.
Nice.
So if you ever want to see anything nice, you can't stream it anymore. You gotta
Okay.
buy the disc. So they
Good.
went and they filmed. I've never watched it, but I've seen clips of it. And this,
Yeah.
they went back
wow.
and made like when he
What?
first meets her.
That's crazy.
Pretty
That's
cool.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
If he only knew then
How disgusting.
how disgusting she was.
As the two passengers, an adult male and a young boy, get their bearings, Pike explains that he met Alora years ago. Alora recalls that he had saved her from a shuttle that time, too, leading Una to comment on her bad luck with shuttles. Alora thinks it could be good luck, depending on how one looked at it. She notes how his uniform was very yellow. He explains it was actually gold because he was the captain now. Alora formally thanks the captain on behalf of Majalis. Pike, now stammering, introduces Una, his number one, who offers to escort them to the ready room for debrief. The male insists on going to the medical facility first, as the boy seems to have been injured. Pike asks if he was the boy's father, and the male coldly replies that it was strictly in a biological sense. So it's like when
Obviously.
so it's like their interaction is fine, and you're trying to piece together, like as the audience, like what's Alora and Pike's like relationship. But immediately when I first saw it, it was like when he's like, "Hey, are you the kid's father?" And he's like, in a biological sense, you're like, "Oh, this is the meat of the episode. This is the problem."
Oh, something's weird with these people. Yeah, I got it.
The funny thing is, I'll tell you. You want to talk about Mandela effect?
Yeah.
I
love
was
talking
watching
about
this
Mandela.
episode, and I know, I understand. I'm watching it like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great.
And you've seen them all, so
Oh yeah, I've seen it. It's fine. I get to the scene at the end where
Yep.
he's struggling. We'll just say that we won't spoil it right now. He's struggling, and stuff is still happening, and I'm like, well, yeah, I know what happens. And then it
Yeah.
didn't happen at
it
all.
didn't happen. Yeah.
It didn't even happen slightly. And I was like, no, but I have vivid memories of this happening. It was the weirdest thing. I was like, there's no way the episode's over with. I remember this happening.
Yeah.
And then I like went ahead and I looked and I was like, well, is there more? And it's like, oh, no.
No.
And I was like,
That's cool.
no. I was like,
No.
it doesn't happen like this. No.
No. That's not how. That's funny.
So when we get to the actual scene, I'll tell you what my thought was, but it was pretty funny. I was just like, okay. Okay. In his office in sickbay, Dr. Mbenga is reading from his storybook to his daughter Rukia, who says he had read the exact same chapter twice in a row. He admits that because she's kept in the patter buffer of sickbay's transporter, To keep her disease from progressing, he can't keep her out for very long. Sometimes he loses track of the details. She asks how long he's been reading to her, and he admits it's been a while. The transporter was on a timer so as to not be disruptive. Just as Rukia is asking when, the transporter takes her. Mbenga stares at the empty chair for a moment just as his door chimes. It is Nurse Chapel, telling him that they had people with possible injuries coming. Composing himself, Mbenga rises to check on his patient. So I think I feel like this is the episode to allow. This should have been so everybody gets sick with the light disease. We find Una's secret. This is the episode we should have found out about Mbenga's secret with the girl.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. 100%. Would have felt more like not like forced.
Yeah, it lets his thing breathe.
I don't know. Why do you think they do that? You think they do that because like they want to like endear you to the doctor like early?
I think it's a thing where they want to introduce as many things as possible so that they could just cut to this thing, or when a character makes a decision, you're like, oh well, he's making a decision because this thing,
Yeah.
It was like I think for an example, in last week's episode, Nurse Chapel and Ortegas come into the med bay and they're like, hey doctor, where are you, doctor? Where? And he comes out of that area.
Yeah. And like, what's he doing in there?
Yeah. And they're like, oh, you're still in uniform. You're not ready to go on shore leave. And he's like, oh, sorry, I was just distracted. And then he's like, yeah, I'm going to go talk to this other doctor person. But us as the audience know he's coming from that room alone. And as he's distracted, it's like, well, yeah, because he's in there talking to his daughter. So it's like,
how cool would that be though in that episode where he's like in his uniform and they're like, he's like, oh, I lost track of time, and he's standing there and he's holding that like kid's book.
He has something in his hand, but I think it's just a pad.
And that's all you know. Like that's all you see.
Yeah.
So you as the audience are like, what the heck is he doing in there?
Okay, Alora explains that the boy, known only as the first servant, was a holy figure chosen by lottery to embody the Magellan people's maxim: science, service, sacrifice. He had forsworn his own family because all on Majalis were his family now. Pike still seems to be struggling with his feelings since seeing her again, before asking what they were doing on the moon they were orbiting. She explains that there was a retreat there for the first servant's studies, and that she and Elder Gamal, the male with her on the shuttle, were taking the first servant back to Majalis when the ship attacked them, demanding they surrender the child. Lon asks if they had any idea who the attackers were. Alora knows the nearest inhabited system is populated by descendants of a long-lost alien colony, but their worlds have coexisted peacefully for centuries. She suspects it was intended to be a ransom, as she was to oversee the first servant's ascension to the throne in 2 days' time. If any outsiders knew of the sacred nature of the ceremony, they would also know that Majalis would pay any price for the child's safe return. Lon suggests sending a landing party to investigate the crashed ship, and Spock adds the attackers may have survived. Alora assures them no such investigation is necessary, but Una believes it is not only necessary but required. Alora then appeals directly to Pike, saying that her people did not join the Federation and could handle things themselves, pleading with him to let her people handle it. Pike, however, is bound by Starfleet regulations to investigate any ship that attacked a Starfleet vessel, and regretfully explains he will do so with or without Alora's cooperation. Alora responds in kind, saying that she would accompany the landing party with or without Pike's cooperation.
Something's up.
Oh, yeah. Right?
Like, no, don't worry about the people that was shooting at us and shot at you and you blew up. Just leave. It's for everybody's best. You just leave. Like, yeah. Oh, that's weird.
That's the thing I sometimes have to, like, when I'm writing the thing for your guys' RPG thing, I'll be like, okay, if I say this thing, everyone's immediately going to be like, he's
Yeah.
suspicious. So I have to sometimes I have to word things the right way so people aren't quite. But usually you and like Andy are always like on it.
I'm
Like,
always just suspicious. I'm suspicious of anybody.
it's pretty funny to go back and look at how many times you were like, don't let him on the ship. Don't put him on the ship. It's like,
Oh yeah, I always say don't put him on. Like, hey, that guy is out there. We should beam him in. Like, no, I wouldn't do that.
yeah. So it's a nice little scene, and I like that she kind of gives it back to Pike. Like they're like, oh well, this is our way of thinking, and she's like,
Yeah.
oh well, this is my way of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, especially then too when she's like, okay, well then that's fine, but I'm going with you. Like, okay. Why? So you can tamper with evidence.
So in sickbay, Chapel scans shows slight reduction in the cerebral blood flow, which Mbenga recognizes as being consistent with head trauma, jokingly admonishing the first servant to not block the hull with his head next time it collapsed. As Chapel prepares to repair the damage with a subdermal scalpel, Gamal demands that she keep that butcher's knife away from the first servant, but instead asks for the medical scanner to check something for himself. He appears familiar with the technology and is able to determine that the first servant's quantum bioimplants are functioning. The Magellans made use of quantum mechanics to heal injuries. He makes disparaging remarks about Starfleet's medical technology and boasts that in his clinic, healing started at the subatomic level. Chapel is surprised to learn Gamal is a doctor, and the elder replies that he had been until he became father to the first servant, who was now his only patient. The first servant examines the scanner, finding it rudimentary but interesting. Mbenga seems particularly interested about the Magellans' medical technology. If it did what Gamal said, that would make disease and suffering a thing of the past. Gamal explains that they had a saying on Majalis: let the tree that grows from the roots of sacrifice lift us where suffering cannot reach. He adds that there was no disease of any kind among his people.
That might come out to be helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I remember when I saw it, I was like, this is really interesting that the Gamal here and the first servant child were like really smart. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's something really fishy going on here.
Well, it's funny too because like when they're like, "Oh yeah, no, he has a subdermal like thing,"
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh no, eugenics!" But you're so programmed now to think that like any like technological like advancement is like super bad in Star Trek. Like that stuff is just awful stuff.
It will always be. They can't stop.
They just love it.
They're like, hey, what if we kept talking about the eugenics war?
You're like, yeah, but you know what's worse? You know what's worse than the Zindi? Technology in your body. I just love it.
It's pretty funny.
And now we live in an era where like that stuff is just normal. Like
Yep.
people get upgrades, like robotic upgrades all the time.
Yeah.
They're talking about putting like chips in our brains and connecting us to the multiverse. Like
that's how the eugenics war starts.
I believe it. I mean, that's how Skynet took over too. But
That's right.
Well,
That's right.
nobody pays
owned.
attention to that stuff.
All right, at the crash site of the attacking ship, La'an and Uhura cut their way inside. Uhura's scans show no life readings. As Uhura spots a still working console and moves to touch it, Lon tells her she just flunked lesson 3 of security. Let your tricorder do the investigating. She explains
Touch it.
she explains that some Klingon ships were equipped with a scuttle system where even the slightest touch would trigger the ship's auto-destruct sequencer. Uhura runs her scans, saying that there was no chance they would blow up that day. The attackers wiped the databanks. Lon warns her that luck runs out fast and admonishes her to be more careful. Before reporting to Spock that the crash site was secure, Alora steps inside with Spock behind her. She recognizes the ship's technology as being consistent with the nearby colony. Spock finds a device that does not seem to be connected to the ship's system, but Alora does not recognize it. She does, however, recognize a small token she finds on the deck. When Spock picks up that thing, he's like, "Oh, what's this? This looks weird." She's like, "I don't know what that is."
No idea what that is.
Yeah, you know
it looks like some kind of brain dampener. This is not part of the ship. Like, no idea what that could be used for.
I don't know why. That's weird. I wouldn't want to talk about that though.
It's perfectly shaped cranial.
It's small enough for a child.
That's weird.
Oh, but look at this coin on the ground.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, right. Oh man, that's funny.
And I also I thought it was a cool little touch that like Lon saying like, okay, a Klingon ship like crashes. It's like their last line of defense is, all right, you touch any of our stuff to get stuff. Like,
yeah, you
burn the ship up.
I love it. Yeah. Like, yeah, that makes sense.
Glory. Back aboard the Enterprise, Alora explains that the token is an oath coin, the highest military honor on Majalis, given to the Lunarian Guard when they swear the oath to protect the life of the first servant. The other side of the coin has been defaced, a forbidden act. She has to now consider the possibility that one of the guards has betrayed his oath and is conspiring with the alien colony to kidnap the first servant. The boy's life was in danger, as was Alora's. Pike offers to keep them on the Enterprise as long as they needed, but Alora had her duties on Majalis. The peaceful transition of power was a cornerstone of their society. When he offers armed escort, she replies that hers were a private people, and foreign representatives were not welcome. What about a friend? Pike asks after a moment. You can have friends, right?
No.
No. No, I can't have friends, but I can have a lover.
No. It's very bad, very bad.
You're not going to ask us about what we do with the child, are you?
Yes. Everything is up to speed. Nothing to worry about.
It's like when they go to the Wizard of Oz, right? He's like, no, don't go there.
Pay no mind to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure I see a man, but no.
That looks like you're using a computer. Nope. Don't look at it. Yeah. We'll get to it too, but then that scene too, like where she's like, oh, I'm so lonely. Like, oh my God. Yep.
Yeah. So in the Magellan capital, a city floating over the surface of the planet, Alora's aide explains her schedule involving an opening speech, a tree planting, and the Festival of Gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Pike can now see why Alora could not stay away. Alora adds one more item to the agenda and asks for the Lunarian guards to be summoned. Ready to shake the tree and see what falls out, Pike asks, and Alora replies she is. As she moves ahead, Pike snaps the holster of his phaser, ready to draw at a moment's notice.
I did like that.
Yeah.
I like that he's like ready to go.
Yeah. He basically
because in a couple couple minutes, you'll get to that part too, where he's like, yeah, it's not on stun. It's like he immediately switched it off of stun. He's not messing around.
I think once we get into it, if I was him, I would immediately change it to basically not stun. When you watch Adam
after that guy,
like,
yeah.
Okay. Like, we're not
that
playing.
That spear must only have one of those too, because they never used that again. They never used that feature.
They just can't hit him. He's too good. That's what we're going to talk about here in the next minute. After I read this part, I thought of you the whole time. So get into it after. So 2 chunks, and then we'll get into it. So in sickbay, Spock approaches the elder Gamal and asks for a word in private, and asks if he recognizes the device he found on the crashed ship. Gamal replies he does not. Spock explains his analysis shows it to be a form of neural dampener, and based on its size, it was intended for use on the first servant. Overhearing, the first servant asks to see it, and Gamal hurriedly puts it back in the box, saying he would rather the boy not see it. The first servant realizes Spock is a science officer and asks if he knew the propagation of subspace radio signals in long-range communications. Spock glances with reserved surprise at Gamal before answering that he understood it to be roughly 52,000 times the speed of light, something the first servant calls super slow. He can see why the Federation had to rely on subspace relays, as the signal would degrade before they were received, even if subjected to radio polarization. Spock admits he does not know many at that age who were familiar with radio polarization. And the first servant explains he was interested because he thought it would be fun to have a friend to talk to at long distance. He had designed his own subspace frequency and thought he could rewire the biovent to generate it. Spock concedes it would be an impressive feat, though Dr. Mbenga would object to using his equipment. Gamal intervenes, saying the first servant needed his rest, as he had a big day coming. Yeah, there's that scene, like, here it is again. Spock's like, so this looks like it fits on the kid's head. Can you explain it? And he's like, nope, no idea what this is.
Not even if I tried. And then they immediately talk about like crazy scientifical like stuff.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, but what about this? What about this thing? They're like, hey, what do I look like, a scientist?
Yeah, I like that the kid's doing it, and Spock's just like, all right. Like, wasn't prepared for this conversation, but all right, like, let's talk about it.
I'm glad that Spock like kept up with him. I thought maybe they were gonna show like he was like smarter than Spock a little bit too.
Oh yeah.
But I'm glad that Spock was just like, it's this. Like, you're not smarter than me, kid.
Yeah. Spock is kind of like a walking computer.
Yeah. I thought the stories were only meant to frighten children. I like the kid in this episode.
The kid is really cool. Yeah, me too. And I think he
was a good actor too.
I think that's kind of the point, right? I think you as the audience also really, they want you to like the kid, so that when stuff happens, you're like, Because I think if he was like, annoying, like a jerk, you'd be like, nah, I don't care.
You'd be like, all right.
Whatever, these people are weird. Okay, here we go.
It seems like they need the power. I don't know.
I mean, clearly. So here we are. So on the surface, Alora addresses the Lunarian guards, reminding them that it was the eve of the first servant's ascension to the throne, and at the sacred time, it was important to remind themselves of the sanctity of their calling, and so ask for them to renew their vows and present their oath coins. The guards kneel, holding the oath coins they wear on chains around their necks for her inspection. Coming to one of the guards, Kier, she sees the casing of his coin is damaged, which she calls an accident. She asks to take a closer look. Seeing Pike staring intently at him, Kier pushes Alora aside and uses his weapon to vaporize one of the other guards, trying to stop him before fleeing. The other guards fire at him as Pike prepares to follow them. Alora takes him a different way. The guards pursue Kier into the gardens, and he is able to fight them off with relative ease. As he seems to escape his pursuers, however, he is tackled by Pike, who has cut ahead of him. As both rise, Kier moving to regain his weapon, Pike is faster and draws his phaser, warning that it was not on stun. Allura steps between Pike and the other guards, saying she only wished to talk. Kier raises his hands in a submissive gesture, and Allura asks why he had been aboard the ship. He replies that he was there to fulfill his oath and renounce everything this floating heck stood for. He draws a knife and holds it to Allura's throat. Long live the first servant, he proclaims, just as Allura elbows him and tackles him to the ground, stabbing him with his own blade.
Yeah.
So the reason I thought of you the whole time,
Mhm.
I forgot, it's like I never watched this thing. So he breaks away and he vaporizes them, right?
Yeah.
So now he's running, and then they can't hit him. They can't shoot him back. They're too good. These are the best
No.
of the best, but they can't hit him. And then they go into the garden, and he's like, kick, punch. And I was like, oh, okay, none of these guys can. He's like the strongest of them all. And then what happens?
They've only been trained in defense or in offense, not defense.
Yeah, right. And then I thought of you 100%. Comes around the corner, and who can get him though is Pike. Pike just tackles him and he's
straight on too.
I can't do anything about this. And I just
But it was like, it's so funny too because it was like straight on. So like they kind of cropped that scene kind of over so it looks like Pike comes out of nowhere, but it's like this long like corridor by all that stuff.
It's like a very
literally like he turned around, Pike just like he just sees him coming. It jumps on him. He's like, "Oh, I didn't expect him to jump on me."
I just thought when you said that other episode, like if you didn't like Pike, it's a thing where it's like only Pike can do it, type of thing.
It's true. Yeah,
just made me laugh.
Yeah, it is fun. Sometimes that is a little comical, but it's all right.
It's okay because we like Pike.
Yeah.
The other thing too, the one thing I did like about this was the part where he's like, "Long live the first servant," and then the lady takes him out. Like, nah,
yeah,
you're not gonna stab me in the throat with that. Okay, in the recreation room back on the ship, Uhura is wolfing down her food while looking at a pad when she is approached by Lieutenant Kirk, who reminds her of her food. Word had got around that she was on rotation with Lon and suggests telling the security chief that she deserved a full hour for her food break. Just as Lon approaches, saying he could tell her himself. Kirk backtracks by saying that he would, but he was conflict adverse and quietly retreats. Lon has a crate full of data chips she liberated from the crash site. While she knows it was against protocol, she cites Lesson 6. Know when to bend the rules. She knows Starfleet would not have approved, so she couldn't put them through the ship's translator, and it would have taken weeks anyway. She knows Uhura has a talent for languages, and so leaves her with the task, much to the cadet's chagrin. So guess who's back for 10 seconds?
Yeah, what a joke. It's just funny now because every time I see him, I'm just like, what does this guy do? What else is he in that he can't be? He can't be in these episodes. Like he's so busy. What's he doing?
Oh wow, we don't know anything about the Majalis people that well.
Well, it's just so weird. Make him like an engineer or like a mechanic or something, because the very department that he's in is needed in every episode, and he's nowhere to be found.
He's just getting food. After not seeing him for like 4 episodes, he's like,
yeah, you haven't seen him since he got shot by the egg, and then he shows up and he's like, oh, today's spaghetti day, huh? Oh, that's cool. I need to go somewhere else, Kirk. You have to man your brothers. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
As soon as I saw him,
I looked ahead because you were like, "Hey, does he ever come back?" And I was like, "Definitely." And then we ended that session, and I went online. I was like, "Does he come back?" Because I don't really remember. And then I saw, "Oh, he's in. Oh, okay, cool. He's in next week's episode." So when he showed up, and then he was like, "See you later," I was like, "I'm sure Caleb's like, yeah, of course, of course."
Oh yeah, he was a real pivotal part of that episode. Thanks, Will. It's funny when he showed up, I was like, well, he's still the most forgettable part about this episode.
In sickbay, Mbenga is astonished to see that the first servant's injuries have healed so completely, it was like he had never experienced head trauma at all. He is inspired to ask Gamal a hypothetical question, doctor to doctor. He explains that he had an 11-year-old female patient with mast cell sygnocemia and asked if the quantum bioimplants could treat it in late stages. Gamal answers that it could, in fact, be reversed. And Mbenga then asks if he had such a patient, could he send her to Majalis? Gamal, however, says the Magellan law prohibits sharing their technology with unaffiliated races, pointing out that the Federation had similar policies. And Mbenga replies that this did not apply to medical interventions. Gamal concedes that one day, an alliance between Majalis and the Federation would serve them all. It's always like the scene where the character tips their hand. They're like, hey, so does that key like open all bank vaults? You're like, yeah, it does. Why? Like, so theoretically, if I stole that from you,
so if someone was to take that, they would have access to the bank vaults. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, that's good to know.
It's like, do you need to get into a bank vault?
No, I'm very wealthy.
Right.
Anyways, I need to go lunch break now.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, when's your lunch break?
Yeah. Yeah.
When would you say the bank is the least secure?
What times do you normally sleep, and where do you put that key? But the thing I do like is it is a thing that they do a lot in Star Trek is like this. You know, the Federation's always like, no, don't hand out phasers and tricorders and hypo sprays and warp technology to people who don't deserve it. And then Starfleet finds it, and it's like, oh yeah, there's this thing that just like nobody will ever die. We have this thing. You just take this little red pill, and you'll never die. Doesn't matter what happens to you.
It cures everything.
And they're no like, oh, can we have it? And they're like,
no, we don't share our stuff with other people.
They're like, yeah, but it's so good. Think about it. And they're like, yeah,
it is, isn't it?
Back in the Magellan capital, Pike asks Laura if she should see a doctor. She assures him that she was fine, but is shaken by the encounter. She had thought she had known Kier and thought him loyal, and begins to wonder if there were others like him that she thought she knew. Pike again offers an armed guard outside the door. She declines, but Pike reminds her that he didn't save her from a pulsar just to let her get killed. She amends that by saying he could come in with her instead, as she kisses him. I want to come inside.
It's my room's always so cold and lonely.
No, I gotta get back to things. I'll see you later.
He's like, hey, so you know how those guards just tried to like kill you? Maybe I should get one of those posted outside. And she's like, oh, but I'd rather have someone inside my room. He's like,
oh, that's weird. I guess I could put a guard inside the room. It would be really funny if she was like this. He's like, no, I'm in love with Vina, or whatever her name was from The Cage or whatever. I can't remember what her name was.
Yeah, I think it was Vina.
Yeah. She's the love of my life.
What's funny is he's gonna end up looking like her.
That's true.
all like burnt and mangled. You're gonna be perfect for each other.
They put me together, but they did not know how humans looked.
They had no idea where eyeballs went. It's like, don't
Does
they
it go
have
on
two
the
eyeballs?
finger?
Don't they? Don't
No,
they
no,
have?
no, no, no.
No, those aren't their eyeballs, you idiot.
In bed later that evening, Pike confesses that he may have been hitting on Allura the first time they met, and she laughs that he absolutely had been. He calls it crazy that they met again, and she agrees that it did seem unlikely, but both thought about the other now and again. Pike jokes that he always wondered what happened to that Magellan girl who couldn't fly a shuttle. She corrects him by saying she did know how to fly it, but just flew it into the wrong place. Pike had the feeling that they recognized something in one another and thought it was a shame they never got to follow through with it. Allura admits she had not been expecting them to reconnect again, but it was rare to know what lay in the future. Pike agrees, though adds that some people get a glimpse of their future. He reveals to her that there will be an accident in less than 10 years that will not end well for him, and that Federation medicine would not be able to help him. She asks how he knows, and he replies simply that he does, without elaborating. Allura knows that Magellan medical technology could help, but that would mean he would have to stay among them and live as they did. She apologizes for overstepping, but he assures her that she didn't. She promises he would be welcome on Majalis, calling it another part of the future to consider. It was a thing where if you don't know where the episode's going, it's kind of like, oh, are the Magellans going to help him? Like,
No.
no.
It's interesting in a way because it's like, Pike obviously has like his like duties and stuff, but they're almost saying like, hey, so like if you just stayed here, like obviously none of that stuff would like happen,
Yeah.
and like we would be able to take care of you even if it like did.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh no,
Yeah.
no, I can't be doing that.
Okay, Uhura calls La'an to her cabin and reveals she has found the needle in the haystack La'an asked her to find. Having translated the dialects from the alien data chips, reading the results, La'an realizes that they had to take the information to the captain. Uhura wishes her luck and asks to know what they find, but La'an tells her that it was her work and she should present it. If she was sure of her findings, that is, Uhura is confident that she is. It was nice to have La'an like basically be nice to her in that scene.
Well, yeah, and making sure that she takes full credit. Like that was, I enjoyed that.
In sickbay, Mbenga is bringing a food tray to his office when he hears the sound of laughter and enters to find the first servant projecting a game similar to hopscotch on the floor, and Rukia jumping through the circles projected. The first servant apologizes, saying he used noble gases from the atmospheric processor to project them, thinking they would be safe. Mbenga lifts Rukia back onto her exam chair, worried about her standing, and she ruefully says she was having fun. Mbenga looks at the first servant and asks how he found out about Rukia. He replies that the doctor and Elder Gamal talk loud, and when he couldn't find anyone with cynochemia in sickbay, he looked in the places he would try to hide in. Rukia asks if she had to go back in, and her father says she does, but perhaps not for much longer. As he places her back in the pattern buffer, Mbenga tells the first servant that no one can know about her. Just then, Gamal enters, having heard noises. The first servant claims he was looking for a midnight snack, but Gamal thinks he had been showing off, and it was time for him to go. So again, another scene of us liking the kid and showing the kid's like super intelligent and like
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I liked him and his daughter playing together. It's kind of nice. So is that kid super smart, or is it like, did they give him super like brain power with like augmentations.
I don't think it was a thing where he was supposed to be like augmented to be like a genius. I think just the type of things that he has allow him to be
Quick study.
quick study, right? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I couldn't figure out exactly what they were trying to say.
Yeah. I think the quantum bio implants like just help him just function better, and he doesn't, I think his brain just works a lot better because it's like
Yeah.
has this implant that keeps it from degrading or anything of that nature. Pike returns to the ship, annoyed at having to be called to hear a very urgent report in person. Una explains that it was probably best that he find out without Alora hearing. Uhura presents a report explaining that she had traced the language of the kidnappers to a non-Federation colony, Prospect 7, a Class L world a couple of light years away. It was a barren world, barely above subsistence levels. Pike is aware, having learned this from Alora, but Uhura reveals her surprise. The dialect spoken was linguistically similar to that of the Majolans, which meant the alien colony was in fact an offshoot of Majalis. Lon asks why anyone would leave Paradise to settle on Prospect 7. And Spock adds that if the colony was in fact Magellan, why would Alora and Gamal tell them otherwise? Pike knows the Majolans did not trust outsiders. Saving Alora from the Pulsar had led to an overture to join the Federation. He is convinced that there had to be a reasonable explanation, just as Mbenga calls from sickbay. Gamal and the first servant are trying to leave the ship. Pike rushes to the transporter room where Kyle is refusing to beam them down. Gamal demands that Pike order his transporter chief to do so. Pike thought that they had agreed they were safer on the ship, but Gamal does not agree. Suddenly, both Gamal and the first servant are beamed off the ship. Kyle insists he didn't do it, and someone had locked onto their signal while the shields were down. Pike calls the bridge, asking if there were any ships nearby. Una reports one, another combat cruiser trying to flee. Suddenly, Gamal is returned to the ship alone and asks where the first servant is. Pike orders red alert.
That was a cool
Yeah,
scene because like I assumed like the planet was taking them.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh yeah, see, something's going on, and then it like wasn't, and you're like, oh, and then it was like, oh no, but it was.
Yeah. So on the bridge, Spock reports the first servant's life signs aboard the ship, and they are unable to beam him back with the cruiser's shields raised. Sankar reports he has hailed several times with no response. Ortega's plans to remind them the Enterprise was bigger. Pike orders Mitchell to secure the cruiser in a tractor beam to prevent them from going to warp, but the cruiser attempts to do so anyways. Mitchell is forced to increase the power of the structural integrity field, and Spock warns that if they still try to go to warp, it could destroy the cruiser. Pike is unwilling to risk harming the first servant or the kidnappers in order to tractor beam disengage. Mitchell does so, but it is too late. The strain causes the cruiser to explode.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Like when that happened, like the first time you see it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's definitely not good. That's bad.
Yeah.
It caught me off guard. Yeah, I mean, honestly, when that thing blew up, it was very like, oh wow, I can't believe they're doing this. And then Pike's like, hey, so sorry, the kid's dead. And she's like, what? I was going to kill the kid.
So Alora is horrified when Pike informs her of the loss of the cruiser and the first servant. She thinks this means their world is over. If the first servant does not ascend, Majalis would fall from the sky, the floating city crashing into the rivers of lava and lakes of acid on the surface below. When a confused Pike asks how one child could prevent such a calamity, Allura abruptly cuts off the communication. Pike then turns to his crew and demands to know how someone could have beamed the first servant off his ship. After a momentary silence, Uhura speaks up and says she knows and glances pointedly at Gamal. Your son seems very intelligent, and so do you, but you don't know anything, do you? No.
Mm-mm. I don't know where he gets it.
In the ready room, Gamal calls Uhura deluded, and La'an defends her, saying she was summarizing facts and drawing the logical conclusion. Pike asks Uhura to walk him through it. Uhura explains that one would need full bio patterns to beam someone off without their knowledge, which would have been collected in sickbay. Gamal had accessed those bio patterns just before attempting to leave the ship. Gamal protests by saying he was the first servant's doctor, but Uhura points out that he has accessed not only the first servant's patterns, but his own. La'an adds that the cadet just demonstrated the dreaded Lesson 7 of security, leave no stone unturned. La'an usually requires people to look under Mugatan breathing stones for that lesson, but considers that unnecessary in this case. As Pike asks Gamal for the full story, Spike calls and asks Pike to join him on Deck 17, as he has discovered something the captain needs to see. Pike acknowledges and orders La'an to escort the Elder to the brig. Now we learn what Lesson 7 is.
Yeah, I was so interested.
Yeah.
What do you ever see what those breathing stones are? Or are they just some
No.
throwaway line? Okay, gotcha.
Throwaway line.
Like, oh no, not breathing stones.
It's another famous thing that Star Trek likes to do is they're just like, oh, well, that's just like this throwaway line.
They just name things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once in a while you do get legit, like they say it and then you see it, but it's very rare.
Mm.
Spock compliments the first servant's ingenuity, explaining that he had devised a method of generating his own subspace channel on an unused frequency. Spock thought there might be some utility in monitoring it. Spock reveals that the first servant had sent a distress signal, something Pike knows is impossible, as no one on the combat cruiser could have survived. But Spock thinks the first servant was not on the cruiser when it exploded, and in fact, he had been transported to where the signal originated, right there on the Enterprise. Inside one of the cargo crates on the deck, they find the first servant alive and well. Pike prepares to take him to sickbay, but the first servant insists he must go to Majalis for the ascension. Pike calls to the bridge to inform Allura that they had news she'd want to hear. Okay, on Majalis, the ascension ceremony is in full swing as cheering crowds greet the first servant. Pike stands with Allura witnessing it, but he has some pointed questions, like, for instance, how the fate of Majalis rested on the head of one child, which Allura says was complicated and sacrosanct. Why would Gamal kidnap his own son? Or why she never mentioned that Prospect 7 was not an alien colony, but a colony of her own people. Allura looks distinctly uncomfortable.
And what's with this giant pit of all these child bones?
Yeah, but not yet. He's outside.
No, yeah, he's
spraying all the smoke and flowers at him.
He's still from the glow from the previous night's activities.
Ba, 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 ba.
Everyone in the crowd just plug him in. And he's like, I don't get this, but alien cultures are what they are.
Whatever.
That's what we're here to do. We're here to observe.
I'm only here as a friend.
Yeah.
In the Enterprise brig, Gamal is approached by Una and demands to be released as he was not a Federation citizen. Una points out that he broke several Federation laws by modifying the transporters to kidnap a minor, whom he then hid on the ship. Gamal insists he did so for his son's safety and admits that the neural dampener found on the crashed cruiser was also intended for that purpose, to make him unable to fulfill his duties as the first servant. He wishes to speak to Pike, but the captain was on Majalis with the first servant. Gamal looks stricken at this, asking if the ceremony had begun, and Una thinks that it had by that point. Gamal admits he deserves to be there, as he had violated his own beliefs as well as his planetary law to try to save his son. Una asks him from what? So that's like that's the reveal of what's been happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always love that too, like in shows and movies where it's like why wouldn't you just like tell people what's going on? Like,
Yeah,
why wouldn't you just
right.
tell them like, hey, so this is really bad, and it's not what you think it is. It's like you wait till it's too late, and you'd be like, oh well, they're going to do something really bad to the child, and they're like, oh, that's not good. Like, why didn't you tell anybody before?
Like,
you know,
if they were so intelligent, they should have just asked Pike when they got on the ship, like, we demand asylum. And then they'd be like, well, that's weird. I guess why do these guys want to stay on the ship? And then Allura would be like, no, he can't stay on the ship. He has to come down. And then they would talk to him and be like, they're going to hurt him. Like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, you can't have the kid.
yeah.
And the episode is only 15 minutes long. La 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 la.
Yeah.
The first servant proceeds through the crowd to the sacred chamber. Allura explains the Magellan ruling council has allowed an exception for Pike, though an outsider, to witness the ascension ceremony because he saved the boy's life and because she wanted him to be a part of it. When Pike asks what he was to be a part of, the first servant approaches, inviting Pike to join him at the ascension. Are you coming, Captain, to my ascension? What do you mean I have to? Where are you going? Aren't you just going to sit down in a big chair?
Well, kind of.
Oh, well, sort of.
It's funny too because like I haven't seen a lot of like Lower Decks, but you showed me the episode where that crewmate is like dying and he's like, I'm ascending.
Yeah.
So that's all I kept thinking of when they kept talking about ascending.
Yeah. Back on the ship, Sankara reports he is unable to reach the captain as the planet was putting out an electromagnetic field that blocked communications. Una orders Spock to prepare a landing party to beam to the surface, but Spock reports that the same EM pulse that blocked communications would also block transporters. Una is incredulous that they were unable to reach the captain at the exact moment they needed to. How convenient.
That's weird. Everything about this day is so weird.
Inside the sacred chamber, Pike stands in the background as they approach the throne, attached to a number of power generators within. Allura kneels before the first servant, asking the ritual question. Do you freely offer this gift of self to the people of Majalis? With joy and gratitude, I do, the boy replies. Do you freely choose your fate? She asks next. Just as he is about to give the ritual answer, the first servant sees the bundle being carried on a stretcher by the Lunarian guards and falters. Two of the guards hold their weapons to bar Pike's approach, but Allura tells them he could see. To Pike's horror, it is a child. The previous first servant, now a wasted, lifeless husk. The guards hold him back to prevent him from interfering, as Allura says he has sacrificed himself willingly for the people of Majalis. Pike is able to overpower the guards holding him, but one standing near the throne strikes him across the face with her weapon, and he loses consciousness with Allura looking down at him. This is the point where I had the Mandela effect. I remember him like getting the kid out of the machine and like him running and like parts of the floating islands like crashing and Alora be
Wow.
like, "You're killing us! You're killing us!"
Oh my god. That's
I
like
remember it vividly, and so when that didn't happen, it just cuts to him in the bed, and I was like,
that's
"What?"
crazy. Is that like a deleted like alternate scene on the DVD or something? Because that's like
I don't
very
know.
specific.
Yeah,
That's a lot more than just when like we remembered that like M like doesn't actually die in
Right.
Skyfall. That's
Yeah.
like a whole that's like a whole thing. It's
And
funny how stuff like that happens,
yeah,
like with your memory.
that's sometimes when I'm like telling a story or even hearing somebody else tell a story, I'm always like, did that happen like that? It's like you can remember fine details that never happened.
That's why my favorite thing as of lately is when I was telling you something and you're like, oh, that you're like, it's literally like the Matrix when like you get plugged into the machine and you have this
Yeah.
like memory of this thing that
Yeah.
memories are weird.
Pike comes to inside Alora's residence and rises to leave. The guards bar his way, but Alora assures them the ascension is complete and that they may go. She tells Pike he may go now as well, and he fully intends to do so, to rescue the first servant from the machine. Alora stops him by saying even if he could get inside the chamber, severing the connection would kill the boy. Pike is dumbfounded, asking why they would need a child to plug into a machine to keep Majalis running. Alora admits she is not sure why or what it will do to him. The founders set it up that way centuries ago, and they had tried to find alternatives for just as long. It had, in fact, been what Alora was working on when they met 10 years ago. Pike asks if the first servant will suffer, and Alora quietly confirms he will, and that they did not pretend otherwise. Pike is disgusted at the idea that the entire Magellan civilization is founded on the suffering of a child. Alora pointedly asks if children did not live in poverty or squalor in the Federation, while those who lived in abundance looked away. The difference was the Magellans did not look away, and their suffering was carried on the back of only one. Pike fully intends to report to Starfleet the first chance he gets, but Alora reminds him that they were not part of the Federation and they had no jurisdiction. Perhaps in the future, she believes, he will feel differently. Pike's answer is a brusque call to the ship to beam him aboard, leaving Alora in tears.
Yeah.
It's a pretty rad scene. So the two things that I liked a lot that I didn't say in the other thing,
Yeah.
was him again, Anson Mount's acting when he sees the like burnt out kid on the thing.
Yeah.
Like, and they zoom on his face, he's just like, what? It's like, what is this? And the thing, like the cords going into the kid's like body and face and stuff, and it was pretty intense. And I really liked in this scene that we just talked about that he just like, get away from me, just like, don't touch me, don't talk to me, like I don't want anything to do with you.
Yeah, it's not going to be okay, and it's never going to be okay.
I think the thing that made me laugh when she's like, well, don't children in the Federation live in squalor and poverty? It's so much like this. And I wanted it to be like, we don't kill the children. Like, I get that maybe there are kids in the Federation that don't got the best life going on, but we're not hooking them up to a machine to.
We're not draining their life energy to keep the planet running. You sick. It's one of those things too, right? Where like this really disgusting dark thing is like shown, and then they're like, they always do this thing where they're like, well, we tried to find an alternative.
Yeah.
Did you really try to find an alternative? How long? A couple weeks? You know?
Yeah.
If it's like sacrificing children, I think you'd kind of dig in and kind of continue to look for alternative.
We don't really give up.
Yeah.
Oh, the ground's too lava like, and we don't like it. We like it when it floats.
We tried a groundhog one time, and that only lasted like a week.
What about all these other
oh.
places that are planets and moons that you could terraform because you're so intelligent?
Yeah, right. No kidding.
No.
No, we like this one. Kill the child. And also, like, the other funny thing too is Pike is like, why is it like this? And she's like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
They did this a long time ago.
Yep.
And then we just keep doing it. Why? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm a little dense when it comes to it, but I was thinking, like, what are they trying to imply with this, like, as a modern? Because usually that's kind of like Star Trek's take is they take a thing and then spin it on its head to be like, how does this apply to our modern society? Is this an active shooter school comment? Like, are they saying that?
No, I don't know. It's probably more towards like people just getting like used.
Yeah, okay.
You know, like veterans and stuff get like used in war, and then they come over back home and they're like forgotten about, and they don't give them like any help.
Yeah,
everybody fails them. So like we stand on the shoulders of them essentially.
That's fair.
Could be a play on that, but it's more sad when it's a kid, not, you know,
well, yeah,
a 50-year-old
like
or 60-year-old, like,
right?
Yeah, war hero.
Yeah. Just an interesting thing. I was trying to see like what they were possibly connecting. It could just be a creepy horror story, essentially.
It could.
I just was like, nah, this probably might be a commentary on something.
Yeah, seems like it always is.
Yeah. So in sickbay, Mbenga is approached by Gamal, who has requested a transit to Prospect 7. The Elder had once thought there were a planet of traitors. The Elder had once thought they were a planet of traitors committed to destroying the Magellan way of life, but they had tried to help him save his child, and he had failed. He was adamant he would not fail the next child, and so has come to Mbenga to offer his help, one doctor to another, with the hypothetical patient with cyokemia. He warns it would not be a cure, but Mbenga thinks it could be the first step to one. The doctor brings up Rukia's medical file for Gamal to examine. So that was pretty cool. I liked that.
I did too.
The guy understood that, like, you know, maybe he didn't realize it was Mbenga's daughter, but he realized, like, well, if I failed with my kid, I'm gonna make sure it doesn't happen again. But also, I heard that you have a hypothetical kid, that needs help too. So,
I think he kind of put the pieces together and assumed that it was.
Yeah, I mean, if
his daughter,
the first servant, put it together, then right, he probably did too.
But I also kind of like that the episode ends with this kind of like happier note.
Yeah.
Because it didn't really need to, you know.
No. Well, we get the actual true horror ending, which is this. In his quarters, Pike has poured himself a drink as he stares out the viewport at Majalis, his expression haunted.
Yeah. How many children does it take to fuel a planet?
Just one.
Yeah. But here's the other thing too. It's kind of an interesting thought, is that like that kid knew exactly what was going on and what he was going to be doing.
It seemed like he
had to agree to it, right?
Yeah, it kind of seemed like he knew he was going to be put in the machine, and that he was going to be used to help the city and like the society and stuff. But it kind of didn't seem like he knew that he was going to be like essentially cooked to death. Yeah,
I think when he saw that kid come out as like that mummy, like just all of his juice was gone.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like this is gonna not feel good, I'm sure. I like that too, because Pike is like, is he gonna be in pain? And she's like, oh yeah, Yeah, it sucks.
Oh,
Okay, good. Yeah, do it. I guess. I don't know. It's even funnier too, like you think, because I had never even thought about. My immediate thought was like, why wouldn't you just keep looking for an alternative? But your thought was like, just go to a different planet.
Like clearly living here, you're not allowed to. You can't. It's hard for you to live here, and if the only way to live here is to essentially sacrifice children, it's like maybe don't live here.
But it's a thing too, where like that's probably not even true because it's like so like in our
Right. True.
in our era and society, like the Mayans used to sacrifice.
Yeah.
So like, what if that continued on like throughout, like into our thing, and it's like that stuff doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
It's basically what it was. They're like, oh no, our great forefathers always killed a kid, so like that's what we do.
I think you answered it. I think you answered what it is. I didn't even think about it. I think it's child labor.
Yeah. Nike.
Right. Yeah. Like
Nike shoes and stuff.
Yeah, like overseas, they use child labor to basically keep, all of the world afloat essentially in certain countries.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's what it is. I think you hit the nail on the head that's what it's commenting on.
Plus, we did that in the 40s and 50s too.
Yeah, that was the best thing to learn about.
Yeah,
do you know where the saying?
that was one.
No, do you know where the saying "light a fire under him"? Do you know where that comes from?
I vaguely remember. Yeah, it came from that era of like child labor and stuff.
Yep. So the chimney cleaners of like England, would
like
hire
3
literal like tiny kids, like 3,
They're
4
the
year
only,
olds.
they're the only ones that fit in the
into
chimney.
And clean it. And they to make him work faster, that's what the line became, was light a fire, light the fire like underneath him so that he gets out of the chimney. And they said it was like a ridiculous amount, that it was so commonplace that children would get stuck in the chimney and die, and the people would have to come and like just get him out, like, oh well, he didn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like
chimney, chim chiroo.
Exactly.
I got another child stuck in my shoe. Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Learning about
it's really great. I like it.
How awful like human history has been.
Yep.
But that happened in like machine factories too. I mean, you can look at like pictures from like the 30s and 40s of these kids that just like are missing an arm, like working like in a factory because like they lost it the week before.
Yeah.
It got taken off in like the machining part, and it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Pretty cool. We don't know why we keep doing it, but we have to.
No, we have to. If we don't do it, we'll die. Well, I guess your society should just die then.
Guess you should do it. Be dead. Do
it. And why was she so like bent on like making sure that like Pike saw what was going on? Like, why did she think that he would be like fine with that?
Like, oh, you're killing the children.
Oh, I like this much more.
I thought he was just going to sit and be a weird ruling child. This is a delightful.
The thing we did in your bedroom the other night? That was great. But can we do this every week with the children?
Let me know when the next ascension is, and I'll be here.
Yes. How long does one last?
Yeah, I don't know why I think she's just deluded. She's clearly like super brainwashed.
It's so funny too, because they're like, oh no, the council wants you here because you saved his life. You brought him back to us. And he's like, yeah. And they're like, all right, kill him for the greater good. Like, they should have had Pike do it.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, just put him in this thing.
Yeah, this is his throne. And they put him in, and he's just like,
He's like, oh, don't look under the blanket. Don't look under the blanket.
yeah. It should have been one of these things where like, oh, that's because you saved him and brought him back to us. Like you have the honors to be involved in the ascension, and they just like hand him a knife. What's this? Just do it. Do it. His blood must fuel the planet.
I think if he physically did it, I think they would have to write that he just would be like, nah, I'm taking this kid's body and we're leaving. I don't care what happens to the planet.
Yeah, definitely.
It also
Yeah,
makes me
releases
laugh
him.
too that they're like, no. If you unplug him, he'll immediately die. Like, has anyone ever tried to unplug him
No.
before?
No.
It's like, doesn't he have quantum mechanic bio chips in his body?
Nope.
Like,
No, he's dead. He'll be dead.
don't
I
bother.
wouldn't even try to unplug it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even I wouldn't even know how to unplug it.
No, you can't unplug it.
No.
Yeah. So that concludes episode 6 of Strange New Worlds, season 1.
Woo.
So we're at our favorite part where we ask
Caleb?
So, Caleb,
Oh jeez.
who gets the Elizabeth Cutler Award as being most forgettable in this episode?
It's Kirk.
Yeah, I knew it was Kirk.
It's even worse.
It's so much worse.
Him being in it for 3 seconds eating lunch is even worse than just not being in the episode.
It's true. It's true. It was pretty
Yeah, it's
bad.
pretty bad.
It was pretty bad.
Especially because like the first episode, they like really kind of show off like that's the thing at the end where they're like, hey, you know this guy.
Yeah.
You're like, cool. And then they're like,
We
have
don't
the egg, zap him, and write him out. Write him out.
It was like one of the writers had pulled and he's like, listen, I want George Sam Cook in the show. And they're like, yep. And he's like, but he's only going to be in 2 episodes.
Like, what do you want him to do? And he's like, I don't have the foggiest clue.
Could we have him eat spaghetti in 1 episode?
There's only one thing I require. A mustache. That's pretty ridiculous.
Can you imagine being him? I think his name is like Dan Janot. Like, could you imagine? You are playing Captain Kirk's brother in Star Trek. And it's like, wow, what a great thing. It's like, yeah, could you just show up for like 3 hours on a Thursday? We're just gonna have you film this thing and then you can get on out of here. So Caleb, who gets the Trip Tucker Award as being the MVP?
Pike.
Yeah. The first servant.
Well, honestly, yeah. I mean, he is the MVP of the episode.
Yeah, no, Pike tackling that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's just this was like his episode.
Yeah, true. What gets the Shran Award as the best action sequence?
I like that scene because it caught me off guard. I like the scene where that ship blows up that they think that the kid's on. I think that's pretty good. Because I totally didn't like see that coming. When they're like, oh, they have the kid like use the tractor beam, and they're like, oh, they're still trying to go to warp, like through the tractor beam. And they're like, oh, well, we disengage because and then it like blows up. Like, oh, okay, that's not good.
Yeah, it was a pretty that's a pretty good scene. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I just didn't expect it, you know.
So what then gets the NX award as being some sweet ship stuff?
I really like when they're in the crashed ship
Okay.
on the planet, walking through that. I always like seeing like a destroyed ship that you're
Yeah.
like
So
going
did you
through.
like the exterior shot where things are on fire, or them like specifically inside?
I like them inside. Everything's like sparking and
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good.
everything's
I know
hanging
what you
upside
mean.
down. Yeah.
It is a really cool anytime in like in anything where they're like going into like a broken down, like
Yeah.
mashed up thing and like slowly making its way through it.
That's why like you and I had like so much fun on like No Man's Skies when we would do like
Oh.
those like abandoned like derelict missions.
Yeah, those are
They're
yeah.
super
You
fun.
land on it and then run through the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even like, my love of like Dead Space is like the ship, like
Sure.
this like just empty ship in space, and it's just scary because not only is it scary because like there's stuff on the ship, there could be aliens on the ship, but it's like the ship's falling apart and degrading, and on the other side of this wall is the vacuum of space. It's so much worse.
It's true. It's true. What gets the Porthos Award as being the most cheesiest?
The continuation of bringing up that like headpiece
Oh,
is like the cheesiest thing. Like they brought it
when he
up
comes
so
into
many
the med bay
times.
and talks to it. Is that what you mean?
Well, the Spock scene is fine because like it's scientist to scientist,
Yeah.
but that's like the third time that they've like brought it up, and everyone's just like, oh, I have no clue what that is. It's just like they keep bringing it up to like show the audience that like, hey, so they're doing something with this kid. It just like overly like overdoes
gotcha.
it.
Yeah. All right. So, what gets the Enterprise Award as being the best scene of the episode?
And that's a toss up for me. I like the whole chamber scene.
Like when the kid's getting plugged in.
Well, yeah, and when Pike like kind of puts the pieces together and
Mhm.
sees like the other like dead kid,
Yeah.
it's all pretty good. And I really like the end too when she's trying to like convince him that it's like fine,
Oh,
and he
yeah.
just says like he says Uma beam me up, like
Yeah.
he says no, and then like leaves immediately. So like I like that because like he's obviously not going to shy away from like his morals.
Right.
So I like that.
So, do you think what do you like more, the cold shoulder or the dead kid?
I'm gonna have to go dead kid on this one.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
Him seeing
Yeah.
that kid in the thing and his face was like, "Oh yeah."
And he's like, huh. From my experience, children are usually alive. He's like,
Just
huh.
that slow thing of him reaching his hand slowly to it to grab it.
Well, it's that thing too. When they show you that cart with like that body, like you knew it was a kid,
Yeah.
But they showed you too, which I appreciate, because a lot of times like you'd be like, hey, so the audience knows that this is a kid, so let's just like, not really focus on it. But they focused on it and they showed you like his expression.
Yeah.
And you're like, I like that. I like that Pike doesn't like dead kids. That's pretty good.
Oh, I like this guy.
I knew he was a good guy.
Write in the comments below what you thought of the episode. Did you think the first servant getting plugged in was just as awful as we thought and as Pike thought? And if there's anything else that we didn't touch on or we kind of overlooked, let us know. And maybe we'll talk about it in next week's episode if we see something down below.
Yeah.
As to next week, we will cover episode 7 of Strange New Worlds, the episode entitled The Serene Squall. So that'll be an interesting episode for everyone involved.
I hope another child dies.
That's really what I'm looking forward to from all Star Trek content going forward.
Yes.
So, as always, like the video if you like what you've seen, dislike the video if you don't like what you've seen, subscribe if you want to keep seeing our content, and ring the bell for notifications because we do these videos weekly. And as always, go over to Caleb's channel, The Plastic Underground Props, where he has tutorials about making props either out of foam or 3D prints. And he has pretty regular content out there. So give him a watch, give him a like, give him a subscribe. And I think, is there anything, Caleb, that's coming out soon that they should keep an eye out for, or has already come out if this video is?
By the time this comes out, I just put out, you've already would seen, I did this like Nintendo. I did an NES like game cartridge.
Yeah.
And I kind of have plans going forward that I would like to make like an NES, like out of foam and like a controller and everything. So
Yeah.
I might be doing that. So stay posted for that. Other than that, I don't know. I have a lot of other plans too, but
Cool.
we'll see which ones I start working on first.
Nice.
Yeah.
And if you like what we do here over on his channel pretty consistently, we also do reviews and discussions about up-to-date TV shows, movies, and sometimes old stuff.
Mhm.
So if you can't get enough of us talking over here, you can go over there and keep listening to us. There's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of stuff over there.
Our part 2 of Dragon Ball comes out
that's
on the
right.
on the 19th.
A few days after this episode is released. So keep an eye out for that.
Oh,
It'll be a different type of child fun activities. So
nobody dies.
no, not like that, at least. And all that happens when a kid gets his energy burnt out of him and he just gets hungry. So it's okay.
Goku was put into that machine, he would just blow it up. Power like that.
Yeah. So thanks for watching as always. If you're listening to this on the podcast thing, rate us and review us. Tell us how much you hate us or like us. Keep an ear and an eye to the channel, and as we go next week into Strange New Worlds once again. So thanks for watching.
Join our federation of podcasts.
Or die trying.
Or die horribly in a machine. Your very essence is sucked out of you for eternity. You know what to do.
See ya.
See ya.
Hello, and thank you for watching the episode. This is Caleb. I'm at work right now, and Will has texted me asking me to do yet another outro reading. So here we go. The Retrek Review is a Daystrom Holodeck podcast produced in association with the Plastic Underground Props. It's hosted by Caleb Stoddard and Will Wilbur, edited by Will Wilbur. Our outro song is by Kaylee Joy Rookledge. Our theme song is by Samo Studios, and our outro song is by Tommy T. Title card art created by Caleb Stoddard. Trophy art created by Adrian Wilbur from Love by the Letters. Synopsis and written plot provided by memoryalpha.fandom.com. Star Trek is created by Gene Roddenberry, and all official clips and pictures are owned by Paramount Pictures. You can follow us at The Plastic Underground Props and the Daystrom Holodeck on Instagram and YouTube. We will see you guys next time.
I love Star Trek. I want to talk about Star Trek. Here it comes. It's Star Trek.
I love doing it Wednesday morning.